May I have your attention to set the mood? Would you all sit up straight? Gently close your eyes. Go back into yourself. Let those swirling energies that want to manifest recede once more into their origin. Enter into the matrix of the myth maker. You are a being of unfathomable creativity, but you don't know that. You spend your time hopping and skipping in the external world, dazzled by its creations, forgetting the origin. Breathe deeply the way the world was brought into being, as we're told in the story of Genesis. Let the breath of the Holy Spirit animate you. You are in that spirit, or you're not alive. That is an infallible implication. You are breathing not oxygen and gas. You are breathing a life force, but you have no idea of its enormity. You live only on the surface, and it's calling out to you to go beneath and above and inside and out. You take so little, and it wants to give you more. So let's today begin the adventure. It's the origins of creativity. Open your eyes, please. The mythical world always has three opening words. In illo tempore, in that time, that magical time, that time that is beyond facticity but is real. And you and I, who are the listeners to these stories and these fables and these tales, we're being beckoned to go beyond the stinginess of our fleshly bodies, to think more than our bellies and how to pay the tax bills. We are not bound by the space of our flesh. We are bound by the farthest reaches of our soul. For you and I are searching for the landscape of our spirit, that vast spirit that cannot be circumscribed by any pioneer. And who shall assist you in this vast journey to explore your landscape? We call upon Minerva, oh, that Greek goddess, who will breathe the wind into our sails so that we can feel the life force as we go about our journey. We'll call upon Saraswati of the East, the goddess of wisdom and discernment, who beckons to her children to come forth out of the depravity of their ignorance. You and I are myths. All of human history is mythical, but we don't see it that way. We're stumbling in the dark of our senses, and so we can't appreciate the light because it hurts our eyes. We are like those cast into the dungeon of Plato's cave, who, sitting there and watching a fire behind us, cast our silhouettes upon the wall, took that wall, those shadows, those silhouettes as reality. And some one of us got outside. They broke the chains that were holding our head to that wall, And as they crawled through the steep pathway that led into that dungeon, they got out into the fresh air of the sky. And for a while they were blinded by the bright sun, which was shining upon the verdure and the forest and all the creatures that were outside. And then his soul just broke open to this creation. And in the wonderment of it all, in the joy and the tears, dashed back down into the dungeon to tell his companions, who refused him, who said, "You're living a life of superstition." Why do we hold on to Plato's story of the cave? Think about that. Let us go back into mythical history. You are Magellan, 1492. You told your friend Columbus that he was a fool. Take your Nina and you'll be swallowed by the dragons at the end of the waters. So you took the challenge and you sailed and you discovered the new world. A world of such vast richness. A world out of which you and I have come. We have come out of the vast void, that plenum, that invisible vacuum out of which all energy arises. You're a Polish mathematician. You're worried because in the laboratory of your mind you've stumbled upon a new idea, an idea that is so exciting in the privacy of your emotions that you can't share it with anyone, because if you do, you'll be thrown in jail. You'll be betrayed to the church as a heretic. Your name is Copernicus. You have dared to challenge Scripture, that most holy body of texts, the eternal Word of God, which says the earth is the center of the universe. You say, no, the sun is. So you're afraid. Who wouldn't be afraid? But you're Copernicus. You're Vasco da Gama now. You've come and you've invaded Mexico. You've lusted for the pretty maidens and taken all the gold from the temples, and you're awed one day. You're looking at this vast pyramid. Somehow there's an echo. Where have I seen this before? You examine its symbols, and you torture a priest to tell you the secrets that are contained there. And in his last dying words, he tells you, yes, this temple is a symbol of 13 heavens and 7 hells. And you realize, my God, it's Dante. Because you remember the Divine Comedy. You grew up on it. Your mother taught it to you. Your uncles made you and forced you to memorize it. And yet you have it here portrayed in the brick and mortar, in the red sands of the Mexican clay. How is this possible? You're a stuffy Englishman by the name of Sir Walter Raleigh. You've come to the New World, condescendingly, of course. And there, you can't help but be impressed. Where did all these animals come from? They're certainly not on my island. And all this fauna and all this, it's impossible, these bugs, these snakes. And then you realize that Noah's Ark could not have held everything. My God, I have to revise the Bible. Only an Englishman could be so audacious. But what Bible story did you pick? There are 2 stories of Noah's Ark. One says he took 2 of everything. The other one says he took 7 pairs, 2 of which he was very embarrassed about. Your soul is on a voyage. You go into your dreamlands at night, all of you, everyone here. Thanks to investigations from my colleague Alan, we know that you dream 25% of the night. If you didn't, you would go cuckoo. Some of you obviously don't dream. And why do you dream? You dream of the things you have not accomplished. Whether they be petty resolutions, fights with your wife, or regretful vignettes with your neighbor because he stole, he borrowed your lawn cutter, and he hasn't returned it for at least 6 weeks. And you're too proud to go over and demand it, so you sit there and fume And that fuming goes right into your soul at night, and it comes out in this vast dream in which you're struggling with a dragon. Obviously, it's your neighbor. What are we saying here? The mind is more than science. Your soul cannot be captured and pushed into the confines of a rational concept and live. You will get anemia of the spirit. You're made for so much more than the rational dimension of your soul. And yet that's a highly important one. Don't let me at all denigrate that, please. Shout out, protest. But at the same time realize that you have come upon this globe for a mission. That mission is to create your myth, your story, to sing your poetry in the cells of your body, so that someday someone who can hear it will realize there's more to life than their troubles. And in the darkest hour of their grief, they know someone else has gone through this too. I'm not alone. No, you're never alone. You have invisible helpers, and one day maybe you'll find them. If you're Irish, you already know about the leprechauns. You and I have a path to tread. And we have markers, signposts. We've been given maps, and yet we don't recognize them. We're like pickpockets who meet a sage, and all we see is pockets. We don't recognize the being that's standing in front of us, who in a gesture of love would pour forth his wisdom in such a way that you would be unconscious with the impact. No, instead, you figure out, how can I get the change out of his real pocket? We're so foolish because we throw away the opportunities that nature is providing. Nature is not our enemy. Nature is not to be exploited. Nature is not to fulfill the prophecy of Sir Walter Scott and Thomas Hobbes and Doyle and Isaac Newton, who looked upon nature and said, aha, let's dominate it. Let's extirpate it by its roots, change it into the Industrial Revolution. Let's destroy this land for the sake of economy. We are imbalanced people. We've taken an idea and we have fanatically followed it. And ideas do not redeem you. They're only hints to a higher world. All our ideas are symbols of something beyond them. Where did they come from, folks? Think for a moment. Think. The next idea you have in your head, where did it arise? I didn't speak it to you. There's no bug running around saying, I'm going to give you ideas, I'm going to give you ideas. It came out of somewhere, didn't it? Where is that where? It's in you. But where in you? How can you bring forth this idea? How can you conceive it? Look at the word we use. And how do we describe birth? It's a conception. How do we describe a brilliant idea or a boring idea? It's a conception. And where does conception start? Not out there in outer space, but in inner space. So you and I are always on a voyage of inner space. Whether we take a rocket ship or a flimsy 60-foot craft that traversed the Atlantic, not knowing what they would find in the days of the 16th and 15th century, it doesn't matter. You decide the craft, the vehicle which you're going to traverse the skies and plumb into the depths of this globe. You choose the craft you want. But you'll only have it by one name. It's called myth. Myth. The mind, by its very nature, is mythological. That's why you have thoughts. That's why you have ideas. That's why you have a philosophy. That's why you have science. That's why you have art. That's why you have crafts. It arises from a matrix of energy within called mythology. Not all mythology is factual. Not all truth is factual. I give you a piece of bread. You're starving. What am I passing? Atoms through space? Yes, if I'm a chemist. If I'm a mathematician, I will measure the distance. And if I'm a physicist, I will weigh and figure out the conjurations of the figure of those molecules. But I've missed the whole point. I've said, I love you in this instance. I love you enough to share the life force so that both of us can stay alive and grow in the meaning of humanity. I pass food to you. A mother with her 6-month-old child nursing at her breast at night. The child's urinary tract isn't in perfect shape. It leaks. There's a smell of urination. What does the mother do? There's no room. There's no clean sheets. So the mother picks up the child, rolls over into that pool herself, and lies the child on the warm, dry side that she has just left. That's an act of love, supreme love. She will endure that discomfort because she loves. And to her, it's not a discomfort. Oh, minor. We are called forth all the time to exceed ourselves. That's the role of the myth. The myth comes into our life. Why? Because it wants to take us beyond our limitations. It wants to spark the terrain of your spirit so that a conflagration grows and illuminates the hidden parts of your mind, the shadow which you're so afraid of. Oh, I can't do that. God will punish me. The church will be mad. What will my husband say? We live so much in the shadow. And so the myth incorporates the shadow. It has to. Because the myth is not afraid of anything. It brings forth all the creativity that has ever come forth in the footprints of time. And you must walk those footprints. You are Prince Shakyamuni. You have been brought up in luxury beyond man's dreams. The moment you have a desire, 87 servants go running off to fulfill it for you and bring it back. You are in grounds that are so full of luscious animals to hunt, to eat. You have fruit trees from China. You have magnificent red oaks from Japan. You have palm trees growing on the south side of your estate. You want a horse? We'll give you a stallion. You want a dog? We'll give you a flock of them, a herd of them if you wish. Your mother and father are the king and queen. They will do anything for you. And they will even stop you from discovering what pain is. How foolish. Because pain is essential to the myth. Pain is essential to the ingredients of growth. You cannot grow without pain. But one day you can traverse it. But you don't know that. So one day, out of the abundance of your spirit and out of your curiosity, you decide, what's on the other side of that wall? Let's go! And you pay off a few of the guards, and on your chariot you go marching into town with the boys, and you discover something that utterly shatters your world. You meet someone who's sick. God forbid. He's never seen sickness. You see someone who's on his way to a funeral. You meet a corpse. Your first response is to reel, because you instinctively recognize the great mystery of death. You see the shabbiness of poverty. You see the degradation of man. Your life is never the same. We resist growth because we want to be comfortable. There's nothing wrong with that, provided we're responding to the call of our soul, provided we're allowing the energies of our heart and mind to rise and form those structures that lead us to liberation. But if we're hampering those structures, if we're getting in the way of that growth, we're going to experience exactly what the great Prince Shakyamuni did: pain, suffering. How did he become the Buddha, the enlightened one? He faced his pain fearlessly. It took him a while. He explored it, and it caused him more pain. He tried fasting to the extreme, and all it did was give him diarrhea. It didn't work. So he realized, I can't go that route. Many of us will be called to extremes, a sudden death in our family, a child who we've nurtured all our love and our attention, who's the summary of our hopes, suddenly is snatched from this world at the age of 6. Oh God, how could you be so cruel? We curse the day we discovered God. We blame God. Suffering is hard because, you see, it's not always rational. Pain is not always reasonable, but it's there. And yet the great myth of the Buddha says, one day you can eliminate pain. You can go. So here we are, going back and forth through history. We are on a hot summer's night in North America watching TV. It's July 20th, 1969. Before our eyes is such a wondrous event. We're holding our breath. For the first time, our eyes are no longer earthbound. We are on the moon. Neil Armstrong dances on the moon. For the first time, a man is on another planet, visibly, tangibly before our eyes. And so we speak with those great words of the Italian, "Questa è una notte diversa da ogni altra notte del mondo." A different night from all the other nights of the world has appeared in our minds. A new mythology was born that night because new possibilities came into being. New possibility. We can conquer space. What about inner space? Yes, that's what the myth is there for, to remind us that we can do that too. You and I must search for those forms that release our pain so that we can find the freedom. Otherwise, we suffocate in the confusion and the pettiness of our little mind. Your soul yearns to express its beauty and its strength. But where are these forms to rescue my soul from this dungeon of mediocrity? My name is George Nakashima. I'm a Japanese American. I was raised in this country. I married as a young man in the 30s. 1941 came, that dismal day on December 7th. In this country which I love, which has given me so much, decides I now should go to jail because I'm yellow. I have yellow skin. I'm Japanese. And thus I'm the enemy of the people who raised me. And so I'm sent off to the Southwest. And I'm incarcerated there in a concentration camp. One of the more interesting reports and orders of President Roosevelt. But what happens? I'm a man in my 40s and I discover a world of carpentry. I discover I'm in love with trees. And there I meet a craftsman who wants to share with me the vital vision of his life. He shows me how to carve in wood. And I'm so thrilled that the years and the months I spent there just pass, melt away. I learn to work with the wood. I love wood. I smell it. I feel it. I meditate on it. And I have begun to make furniture like no one else has. And today, this is true, today I'm in my 90s, and I'm still contemplating my art. And I've written a book called Soul of a Tree. And I live in Pennsylvania, of all places. This man found his myth. He found it through suffering. He had no idea what was going to lay before him when he entered that concentration camp. And yet he went beyond his limits. He could have sulked. He could have become bitter. He could have blamed ceaselessly for the rest of his life and just burned out his soul. to a cinder of regret. But no, he didn't. He became inflamed. He created his myth, his story, his poem, which you and I have to do, which you and I are called to do. You see, our minds are made for symbols. And a symbol is a multi-dimensional reality, so that each time you come back to it, you see something more. You tilt it slightly, and a new relationship comes out. It's like going back to your favorite book, and you say, that book has really changed. I'm getting a lot more out of it now. It's like children who realize as they get older how smart their parents have grown in the last few years. We must resist becoming like Charles Darwin. Oh, not the Darwin who wrote that magnificent treatise on evolution, but the Darwin who said in his later years, I've lost the capacity for poetry. Oh, he lamented that. He cried one night in his home in England. He said, I've been so used to quantifying my mind, I cannot find the qualities of life anymore. I can no longer sit down and read a poem and get transported to other realms. He regretted that. The mind can atrophy. Don't let the myth get away. What does a myth do? It dialogues with you. It challenges you. You must get into that dialogue. You must contemplate it. Choose a myth. Can I go back to the past? Why not? Because the past in illo tempore means what? It's timeless. It does not have the corrosion of your automobile. Your automobile cannot become a myth. Sorry. You may like to give it mythical status, but it'll never attain the rank of a myth because it will one day vanish. A myth is not like that. You carry myths in your heart. You carry them in your mind. You carry them in your memory. And that memory unites with all the memories that have ever been or ever will be. A myth is a vision that fools you out of your limits. It reveals the energies of your soul. And those energies require a structure. Because with energy without structure goes nowhere. Goes nowhere. So the story, the movement of your body, the release of your ideas, that's your structure. That's what allows the energy to free you in the actual implementation of it. You must come into confrontation with the mythical aspect of being. If you must go to an ancient myth, or you might read the Genesis story, let there be light, and so it was. Or you might read, I have said that the soul is not more than the body. I have said that the body is not more than the soul. And nothing, not God, is greater to one than oneself is. Witness. You must reach into these myths, search through them, find what they can speak to you that touches the latent possibilities of your life. For if you don't, you will shrivel up. You will become a dried mist. You might read something like this. I am yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and I have the power to be born a second time. I am the divine hidden soul who created the gods and gives sepulchral meals to the denizens of the deep, the place of the dead, and heaven. Hail, Lord of the shrine that stands in the center of the earth. You are I, and I am you. That's from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And maybe you're with Jesus, this strange man from Jerusalem, who took on the establishment, who told the Pharisees they were a brood of vipers, bastards, in those days. And he says to you one night, those who he's gathered, he says the following: whoever drinks from my mouth shall become as I am, and I myself will become he. And the hidden things shall be revealed to you, And I am the all, and the all came forth from me, and the all attained to me. Cleave a piece of wood, and I am there. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there. Something echoes in us when we read a fairy tale, a story. Going to a movie like Star Wars can do it. Why? Because you see, the earth has only one purpose, ultimately. And that is to stimulate in you the powers that brought it about. It is to stimulate in you the powers that brought it about. Why are you so insecure about life? Why do you worry? Oh, I don't know about my acne. I'm not loved. Will I be accepted? Will I get the promotion? We have all these worries. They come over and they just distract us. They cloud our minds. They shrink our emotions. They constrain our spirit. And yet we're called forth into being. We have within us the mythical powers that have created the myth. Myth is not a falsehood. It's a truth at a special level of awareness. You have to search for that awareness. Then the myth will speak to you. It'll resonate. The myth. Your energy. Consciousness. These three weave together. This is the source. It uses the energies to speak the myth. When the myth is spoken properly, when you're listening truly, you go right back into the consciousness and those powers open up. We do this sometimes when we do something very necessary for our sanity, and that is ritual. You see, ritual is an enactment of the myth. And what do we use in ritual? Look, we use earth. We use water of our baptism. We use fire, the candle. We use air. We breathe upon. We speak of that. We breathe upon you the Holy Spirit. And we use space. Not only that, we combine these with sound and movement. We're not static beings. And all of this is what? A drama. And what is a drama? Nothing but reenacting the myth. Why do we do these? What do we call these in the Christian context? Sacraments. A sacred activity. The myth is to touch in you the realization that you're not just a secular being, that secularity is speaking forth in a hidden way to a deeper truth within you, which is called sacredness. You're called to be divine. What does that mean? Well, all of history has been trying to tell us that. History is the story of man and woman's effort to discover the meaning of the myth that they are. That's all it is. Earth, water, fire, air, and space are all in you. All the elements that comprise this universe are somehow contained in you. You have to have the minerals from the earth. The earth is a living being, according to Plato, according to the North American native Indians. It makes sense. Where does our food come from? Where do our crops grow? In the earth. That's living food. Only life gives life. Non-life cannot give life. And that earth, that magnificent earth that we abuse so much, in the ancient times was called Gaia. And the first religions were not the mythology of the Greeks, but were the mythology of the goddesses. The first religion of mankind was a religion of the goddesses. I personally feel that as long as we desecrate the earth, we will abuse the nature of woman. Because the earth is her symbol. The earth is her mythology. And if you abuse the symbol, you will abuse that which it represents. If we want to understand and respect and revere properly the nature of woman, we must rescue the earth from its ecological disasters that we're perpetrating today in the name of advancement. That's my prejudice. Creativity is an energy that flows, arises from, and is expressed by your spirit. You are bringing forth new creations every instant, every micronometer of time. We are told this, and yet we ignore it. It's even in the Christian tradition, in the Judaic tradition. Think for a moment. Go back. Recall in your scriptures how this vast earth was put together, how it came about. Think for a moment, for example, in the Genesis story, the first one, the most important one, not the second one, the Adam and Eve one. We all go to that one because it's juicy. But the first one is much more important because it sets the theme for the entire scripture. The Jewish mind thought this way. That's probably one of the reasons why it had two stories. It has a remarkable sense of humor. It's like the Jewish mother who buys 2 sweaters for her son's birthday. And he walks down the next morning, very proud, wearing one of them, and she says, "You didn't like the other one?" Oh, they're clever people. So what do we find in the Genesis story? There's a vast void. Chaos. Now, we tend to think chaos is a negative thing. But in the Greek, it means possibility. Your mind is in a state of chaos before you give it structure. It can go in all the kinds of directions. That's chaos. You know, it's like the kids at home. Oh my God, they're running all over. It's chaos. So you come in and try to put a little more order in, right? Same thing. The Genesis story tells us how not only creation came about, it tells us how the energies of our soul arise and are manifested. The creative outcome, the creative product. How are they manifested? How did this vast divine being bring it about? He didn't have silly putty. He said, "Let there be light." He spoke. He created from his consciousness. He created a vibration, a sound. And that sound congealed. It condensed. And it became the world. And as long as God is singing that sound, the world will persist. If he stops singing, it goes. But where did the sound come? Now this is important. This is what we miss, because the Hebrew author in his shrewdness is trying to say something by implication there. Sound comes out of silence. The matrix of silence is the unlimited source of all creativity. And your way into silence, your mythological journey, is called meditation. Because meditation's sole purpose is not to reduce stress or to lower your blood pressure, but to introduce you to the silence of your being, where your real self resides. Because there you become the myth maker. That's where you discover your creativity. It's residing there. There are treasures just at your fingertips if you would only become silent and go within the heart of your consciousness. I would like to close with a poem. The old voice of the ocean, the bird chatter of little rivers, winter has given them gold for silver, to stain their water and bladed green for brown, to line their banks. From different throats intone one language. So I believe if we were strong enough to listen without divisions of desire and terror to the storm of the 6 nations, the rage of the hunger-smitten cities, those voices also would be found, clean as a child's, or like some girl's breathing who dances alone by the ocean shore, dreaming of lovers. To live in the world is to live in the world of polarities, of good and bad, dark and light. It's all part of creation. You and I must learn to harmonize those polarities and those conflicts. And as you go about writing your own myth, singing your own song from the soul of your energies, there are times when people will oppose you. And when they do, I offer this suggestion. Hang up a sign with large letters which reads, "Be patient. God isn't finished with me yet."